If you're looking to start to build strings or you want to upgrade your string jig, here's a simple way to make a solid string jig that's just as good as any string jig that would cost you $500+. This cost about $50 in materials, but I had most of them just laying around here, so super simple, and we'll get started on it. Okay, to get started, I just used some 1/2-inch round stock that I had laying around, and I cut them to 4 of them to 8 inches long, and then I had some 1-inch square tubing that's pretty heavy walled, and those are going to be the arms, and the square tubing I cut to 1 foot. And then I had to clean them up because I was using older material and just get all the burrs off there so I didn't cut any strings. You could use anything you have lying around. It doesn't really matter the diameter. Originally I was gonna just turn them down in the lathe and make the little grooves for the strings, but I decided it'd be easier if I just put a bolt in because my lathe is not very big or powerful. So it's just quicker this way to drill a hole and then tap it. I'm definitely not a machinist, so there's people out there that could do a lot better job of this, but it's pretty straightforward. So then I'm just tapping it, and I could use the lathe to tap it, but I just find it easier just to do it by hand in the chuck there. So that's I'm tapping at 1/4-20, so I'm going to use some 1/4-20 bolts on it. Just cleaning it up. You don't have to do this. You could just run the string right around the round stock. But if you're trying to make smaller loops, it'll be easier if it's necked down a little bit. So I'm just throwing the bolts in there. Like I said, there's 4 of them. And instead of having the hex head on it, or like the bolt head, I decided just to turn it down just to make it easier to get the string off once it's done. So I'm just cleaning it up. I'm not measuring anything. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, make sure all the edges are smooth and rounded over so I don't have to worry about it cutting any string. Like I said, you don't have to do this. You can make it a lot easier. So I'm just kind of finding the center of that square tubing. And the reason why I use square tubing instead of just a piece of strap is because I wanted it secured on 2 points. So that way there was no flexing at all. So I was just working my way up, drilling it up to 1/2 inch. And it was working just perfect until I got to 1/2 inch, and I only had 1 1/2 inch drill bit, and it was really dull. So I was kind of fighting with it, and the belt started slipping on my old drill press. So after fighting with it for a little while, I just decided to use a taper drill bit and a drill just to make it big enough for that bar stock to go through. And I was going to go all the way through, but I decided just to do the top, and then I already had a hole in the bottom that I could weld through. So it's not quite as secure as I originally planned, but it's plenty strong enough. Then I just got a piece of plywood and cut it to make a little jig so where everything stayed square while I was welding it. It probably would have been better to weld it with a MIG or even a TIG, but this is what I have, so it doesn't really matter as long as it's square and strong. So once I got everything secure, I just welded it solid, and I did the same exact thing to both of them, and then just cleaned up my welds, get all the slag off. Then there I'm cutting the Unistrut. So this is just Unistrut you can get at any home center. They use it mostly for electrical and plumbing, but it makes a really good rail. And I cut it to the length of like an average traditional bowstring. If I was doing solo cams or something like that, I'd have to make it longer, but they come in 10-foot lengths and you could just cut it to whatever you want. So I'm just making the slide rails there. I cut them to 8 or 9 inches. Doesn't really matter. I was just making these numbers up. So there's all my pieces that just kind of putting everything together. I use the nuts that are made for Unistrut. They're kind of soft, but they dig in really well, so they make them really solid. I don't know how well they're going to hold up, and so I might have to change something up for that. But other than that, everything's pretty solid. It goes together really easy. The way that slides on there, there's no way that it can flex in because of those slide rails. And you use a wrench to tighten everything. I could weld a little tab on there to make it where you could do it by hand, but I just feel like you could do a better job if you're using a wrench, so I just left it that way. And most of the commercially made ones, they use a wrench as well, so I guess there's a reason why they do it that way. So you just tighten everything down, pretty easy, straightforward. Still adjustable in any direction. And I'm just trying it out, make sure it's sliding smoothly. I guess if I really wanted to, I could put some kind of measuring device on there so I didn't have to use a tape measure, but I just left it like that. And then I just welded a couple of tabs on the bottom so that way I could just clamp it to my table instead of having to secure it permanently. And those, you could just use anything for that. Then just putting a coat of paint on, just to put lipstick on the pig. And I'm trying it out here. And since I've made this, I built a few strings on it and it's worked perfect just as well as any other commercially made one I've ever used. Kind of at my house, I've used a bunch of different methods, and there's really no excuse for people not to make their own strings. You don't have to build a string jig like this. You could just put nails in a 2x4 and call it good. But a string jig in this style, it does make your life a little bit easier and your strings come out a little bit better. But I hope this helps. If you have questions, just let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to help. Good luck building yours.